Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We got another one. We got the Courtesan Cup decks. Yeah, finally got the Courtesan Cup decks. We have the top 8 of day 1. Um, Now there was a cut to the top 32 on for the draft period for day 2. I felt like that the top 8 was really representative of what the best decks were at the Courtesan Cup. Um, Thank you to Ron for running the event and his team. Thank you to everybody who showed up. Everybody was wonderful to meet. I had a great time there. Um, and I'm really excited to go into the stats and breakdowns of these decks. I also have the Gen Con lists from 2023, and I thought it'd be cool to compare and see where the meta has come from just in a year. In the past year of Sorcery playing with the alpha and beta card pools, it has evolved every 3 to 4 months. It felt like Fury Road was super popular and everybody was playing it, and then people found more aggressive lists with Air and Avatar of Air, and then you have the Seer list with the Yggdrasil combo being so consistent, and then people are playing the Death Speaker list of Jin combo still, and so the meta is evolving every single day. So watching the meta evolve in this last year has been really interesting and really fun to watch, and really a great thing to be a part of. And at the end of this video, I have some deck lists from the Gencon2023 to go over, and they're very interesting and very cool deck lists to see where everything's come from. So without further ado, the first place list here, we'll go first place to 8th. And I'll have the top 16 lists in the description if you want to take a look at those. Here we have a Sorcerer Air Earth list, Air Earth mid range almost, with the Atlas Wanderers and Pudge Butchers and Phalanx. These big top end creatures are must kills on any given portion of the turn. If they play an Atlas Wanderers, they play a Pudge Butcher. If you don't have some way to deal with it or counter it, it's going to run you over. Onyx Core for an extra bit of ramp. And then you're also playing Air, so you have Dark Tower, Gothic Tower, and Lone Tower. And getting your Root Spiders on turn 2 and playing that under your front sight is a great way to slow down the game. Phalanx on turn 3 is absolutely terrifying, and Boss Trolls on 2 can run people over as well. A Pudge Butcher on 3 is also another scary one, because if they don't have a berry in hand or some kind of lethal minion to take care of this, Pudge Butcher on 3 can absolutely steamroll somebody. So congrats to Heroes Group on the first place finish here of day 1. This is a really, really strong deck. It looks very similar to an Avatar of Earth list, Air Earth list, but with a sorcerer card draw. You can probably ride your minions to victory. Only having 17 minions and 21 magics is a very interesting split, but I think is probably to deal with their minions effectively. Three berries and 2 lightning bolts will take care of 90% of 3 power minions, and then berry to finish it up. Grapple Shot is also a huge tempo swing. If you get a Phalanx or a Pudge Butcher and Grapple Shot them and do a 10 damage hit in a single turn, that's massive. And then Gigantism plus Grapple Shot can also just win the game off of a Unicorn. You can have a Unicorn in play, Gigantism. If you have 7 mana or some way to get 7 mana for the turn, and you attack for 10 in Grapple Shot, that's 20 damage in a turn. You can do that. 3 Bedrocks for probably anti-Geo or Roots decks. Mirror Realm is a great just auto-include if you need another Earth, if you need another Air for your Grim Reaper. It could also be another Holy Ground or another Village or what have you. Really cool list. I'm definitely going to give this one a try. Second place here, we have Death Speaker. Death Speaker with a Summoning Sphere Jin combo list. This is the Eric's Curiosa list. This ended up getting torn on, I think, on the 4th match. it was a very, very cool moment to be there for. But playing all the other cores and stone, some delay pieces with Falconer to get some bats. Very interesting. Oh, Scarabs is this other target here. I find Scarabs is a little scary with a lot of the fire that's running around, but very cool. Imps and Death Speaker. Wayfaring Pilgrim is a great one because you play him to the corner. If it dies for some reason, if your opponent uses some kind of removal on it, you can just cast it from the yard and get another card off of it. It's a cheaper Princess Wizard, so that's really cool, especially in a Death Speaker wanting to draw more cards kind of game plan here. Lightning Bolt removal, Wind Blast. Wind Blast is a great, probably one of the ability to push everything and rearrange people in the board into a more awkward spot for your opponent is really strong, and only at 2 mana is very cheap. Congrats on second place, and congrats on tearing the first Eric's Curiosa. That was super cool. So here we have Taco Cat's Firestorm, Avatar of Air plus Fire list. This is a hyper aggressive Avatar of Air list with trinkets and Gaia Hippogriffs and Cavalries. The ability to push these minions and attack anywhere is so strong. Only being 3, like the highest power here is 3, so you're winning on being able to attack every single turn or trading profitably with trinkets. It is super scary. Firebolts is a good 3 power removal. Lightning Bolt, same thing. Just really efficient removals. And the Blaze movement is also probably a really cool include here. I'd be interested on the, like, if you're getting to 3 or 4 mana, do you try to get to 5 so you can do a 4-drop and a trinket? It'd be kind of cool to see there. Playing the Free City is a great defense option as well. And what I found when I tried to do a Avatar of Air fire list is any fire site that is not air feels super awkward to play, and having to figure out where the best spot is to play this is super hard to do. So I think Taco Cat here went 6-1 with this list, so very nice job. Very good showing. Fourth place here we have a Geomancer. When I first saw a Geomancer, I was like, okay, why not play Pathfinder? Because they both get that early card advantage of, I think, 5 or 6 cards of drawing spells, and then winning off of that early card advantage. But Geomancer's ability to play sites where they want them, even if it's just nearby, is good, and it has its own trade-offs. So I think they're very different. Playing Boss Trolls and Autumn Unicorns for those well-costed minions. Root Spider, I think it, looking at the stats, was the most played in percent of decks. I think it was at like 37 or 38% of decks played Root Spider. So that was interesting to see. One of Amazon Warriors, just a 5 power minion. It's just a big beater. Atlas Wanderers, the Phalanxes, these are all well-costed minions, so that's the power of this deck, I feel like. And then the Onyx Core and Amethyst Core, just to get those out 1 turn earlier. They're also playing the towers, so you can ramp into a turn 3 Pudge, for example. Awesome list. That's 45 spellbook. That's super cool. Moving on to the 5th place. 5th place here, we have a Sorcerer Mono Earth list. This is super cool. Just playing Rolling Boulder and Onyx Core for a little bit of ramp. Shield Maidens throws a wrench into all kinds of gears of damage math. It removes the ping from deserts. It totally shuts off fire bolts. Shield Maidens itself takes 3 to remove. So you have to bury or lightning bolt her. A bodyguard to help protect the sorcerer for a little bit longer. But the Bannerman also are they playing? Yep, Border Militias. Border Militias plus Bannerman is super scary. If you can get 3, maybe 4 foot soldiers and play a Bannerman and attack in for 6, and that's really good. Playing your power separated between minions is very strong, because then you can't Earthquake or Atlantean Fate and just remove all your minions. If you're just playing 1 or 2 minions, the ability to break up your power across 3 different minions is very strong. The one of Dispel, or 3 Common Sense, so it's just a Dispel or Common Sense target. Also, Border Militia being ordinary, you can Common Sense for it, and so just Border Militia, House on Bannerman, and you just have a swarm of minions you don't know you have to deal with. So that's super awesome. And then Land Surveyor for some early card advantage / ramp, and Dwarven Digging Team to help prevent some just inherent burying. So very cool list here. Oh, and Dome of Osiris is another interesting to include. Bit of a fort piece. Playing this on turn 2 really helps create the inability for your opponent to attack efficiently. So nice job on 5th place. Here we got Jam's Battle Mage list. This one is slightly different than Count Tolstoy's, or the interesting to include here is the 3 pirate ships. I talked to him after this, or after he played, and he really liked the pirate ships. It creates this awkward play for your opponent it's like, well, you have to deal with this big pirate ship, maybe not. If he has a floodplain, being able to attack onto a floodplain is pretty good. And if your opponent is playing water, you can grapple shot your pirate ship and then attack for 10. It's very, very strong there. Pirate ship has a little bit more limited maneuverability and usefulness than a Pudge Butcher, but it's that 4 for 5. That's very strong. Phase Assassin, getting a free hit in, or Headless Haunt. Headless Haunt is it feels so bad to play because the randomness of it. Sometimes it just screws off into a corner and you go, well, why am I playing this thing? But the random scary possibility thing you have to deal with is very strong as well. Atlantean Fate is the most played water card, bar none. Its ability to turn off sights, its ability to reduce, to help you come back from the game if you are able to play this on turn 4, and submerge 2 of their minions they played on turns 2 and 3. You can play a big thing. It is so strong in tempo, and Color Screw and Threshold issues off of Atlantean Fate is very strong as well. So nice job on 6th place. Okay, and now we got the 7th place here, Ragnarok Geomancer, which is very similar to Ragnarok that won, but they don't have the ability to dig as well as the Seer Roots list. Roots here is more of I feel like if it shows up, that's awesome. That's a great game plan. But if not, you can also win off of Craterize. And I think it's Orb of Balberith. Yeah, a double Craterize is super huge. And then playing some ramp with the stones and cores. Only 8 minions here. Land Surveyors to help find the roots. Vile Imps to help chump block and deal a little extra damage. Crown Prince, if you play Crown Prince and have another mortal and pop roots, you get Crown Prince goes to hand. So it's another good rebuild option. And then Death Dealer is Death Dealer, and you can really reset the board. If you don't have roots or you don't have Craterize, you can kind of stabilize with this. 3 Divine Healing to get to that longer game plan, where Roots Seer is probably popping Roots on turn 5, maybe 6. I think Geomancer is popping Roots on turn 6 at the earliest. 7 or 8 is probably where they're popping Roots if they have it. I'm also double major explosion is super huge. You probably have done a couple points of damage up until this point with maybe minor explosion, or you've infiltrated a minion or what have you. So double major explosion also can get you there. So very cool Geomancer Roots list. Moving on to 8th place. So here we have the list, the winning list: Entangled Terrain, Angel's Eggs, all these really well costed minions. The Amazon Warriors post Roots is very strong. Everybody saw the effectiveness and the consistency of popping Roots on turn 5 with Bedrocks and playing on Amazon Warriors, then following that up with a Sinkhole after that, and blowing up the opponent's first site and just attacking with Amazon Warriors is so punishing. Counterplay to this is have Bedrocks in your deck, maybe Pit Vipers, so you could like play Pit Vipers off your first site, and Amazon Warriors can't really attack without just throwing yourself into it. But this is an amazing list by CJ. I think it'd be very cool to look at some Gen Con lists from last year. These are lists that the Sorcery official TCG account has. I'll leave these in the description as well. But here we have a Pathfinder list that's a Fire Air list. In the very early games of Sorcery, Fire Air was deemed, quote unquote, the aggressive list. It wasn't the Fire Earth that we have now. It was Fire Air was the big aggressive boogeyman. The 3 Highland Clansmen here kind of shows how much slower the game was a year ago. A lot of people were getting to turn 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 and still fighting it out. Whereas now it's like if you don't have a 2-drop on turn 3, you're looking a little sketchy. Cerberus and Chains on a Pathfinder kind of makes sense. You can move around and it blocks. Pursuers and Cavalry and Hippogriffs are both very strong on charged minions. But then you also have a Vampire, a Manticore, and Grandmaster Wizard. Like a 5, 6, and 5. Like these are big minions, and this high-end curve just doesn't exist anymore in Sorcery competitive decks. Poison Nova and Infiltrate still very good. Only 2 grapple shots. A 3 threshold card in a Pathfinder is very sketchy. So this maybe would be different nowadays, but a very cool Pathfinder list. Moving on here to a Roots list. This is a mono Earth Roots Seer. They still have the Crossroads, but I don't think it was quite refined to the point of where Roots can be understood that Roots could be found within the top 50% of your cards. A lot of the times, you can see 10 sites turn 1 with an aggressive sites mulligan plus a Crossroads. But then they're also playing 2 Conqueror Worms and 2 Retainus Titans, so they're not doing the turn 5 Roots play. Their Roots is panic button. Roots is like, oh, I'm getting overrun, I'm going to rebuild faster because I have 3 Bedrocks. Kind of thing. And you also have Chains here to slow the game down. Pendulum Apparel kind of blocks off cross from anybody playing anything close to you. And a Mixed Terror to ramp something out. But you can see here the decks a year ago were much slower. 2 Crater Rises. So a really high-end mana curve here for... So here we have a Avatar of Earth Air mid-range list. So this is getting a little bit closer to what we see now, but like it has a gnomes in here. I don't think I've ever seen gnomes played. They die to deserts, they die to everything. The ability to burrow is not good enough to warrant the 1 toughness. The 2 Land Surveyors maybe would have been 2 Land Surveyors or 3 Land Surveyors and a Hounds now. Dryads doesn't play into the Avatar of Earth game plan, but here we have a Craterize in an Avatar of Earth list. This goes back to the games were slower. A lot of Earth lists now get to 5, maybe 6 mana, and you want to be attacking with Avatar of Earth and using that ability to gain card advantage because you can just draw sights or spells. The 3 grapple shots are I get that. The 3 common sense are very strong. The Pudge Butchers are very good. The 3 cave trolls, maybe this is only one of them now, and having more aggressive minions like with Bosch trolls. Longbowman is a good 3 power minion, but it's not above rate for anything. You just get ranged. But only 2 unicorns instead of the 3. So these little changes really add up to a lot. And moving on here to what I think is the is the craziest Pathfinder list I've seen in a long time. We've got a Summoning Sphere, some Iron Shackles for some removal, but look at these threshold counts. This is awesome. 3 Wayfaring Pilgrims to draw some more cards. A Cerberus for a double fire threshold. A single Pudge Butcher for a double earth. A Stone Gaze for a double earth. And we have a great old one, triple threshold, and a Divine Healing triple threshold. Like, this is wonderful. We also Pristine Paradise. Pristine Paradise is very, very bad in Pathfinder lists. So you can probably ask Zach Attack this too. It does provide the mana the turn comes in, but it's blank the next turn. And then your opponents have this sight they can attack and mana screw you for out of 1. Also, Color Out of Space with Pathfinder gets turned off all the time. But like he's playing this first because he has so many different colors and thresholds. But this is the crazy stuff you find a year ago that you really don't see anymore. But this was very cool to take a look at. All right, moving on to stats here. I've got the breakdowns of the top 32, top 16, and the Gencon 2023 lists, and percentages wise, and comparing all of those. I also have some gameplay of why these cards are so good and the examples of what makes them very strong in the game. So starting off here, we have the left side is the Courtesan Cup entire playfield. Center is Courtesan Cup top 16 of day 1, and here on the right is Gencon 2023. I wanted to include this to see where the meta has come from and how different it was even just a year ago. So at the Courtesan Cup, the Sorcerer was the most popular avatar by far. About 33% of the decks were running Sorcerer as their avatar, and then Enchantress was the next most popular avatar overall, but only one of them had made it to the top 16. I think this is a testament of how hard that deck is to play. It is very strong, but it is a very hard deck to play, and if you stumble a little bit, you can just get run over. In the Gen Con, Sorcerer, I don't think had yet been figured out. The second card draw seemed really good, but a lot of people were still playing 6 and 7 sites, and so Sorcerer's ability isn't active until turn 8. And at that point, the game is either already kind of won or lost. With Fury Road coming around, and we're like understanding that, you only need 4 or 5 sites, and then you can start double drawing. That's where Sorcerer gets really, really good, when you can turn on that second ability sooner. Overall, Avatar of Earth and Battle Mage were a very popular avatar at the Courtesan Cup, but only no Avatar of Earth made it to top 16. I think a couple made it to top 32 in day 2, but Avatar of Earth is very glass cannon-y, and the Battle Mage lists felt a little more consistent. It's very similar game plans, Avatar of Earth and Battle Mage. They're both aggressive avatars, so you want to be on your opponent's sites, and that opens you up to a whole bunch of different avenues of getting hit. Death Speaker here, being only 10% of the playfield, but 12% of the top 16. Death Speaker is a very consistent list, and it's very strong. It's also a little tricky to play, but it's very good. Death Speaker at Gen Con 2023 was its first good big showing of the Gen combo, the ability to play Grandmaster Wizard and draw cards, and the meta being slower back then really allowed the Gen combo to flourish. And Geomancer didn't exist a year ago, but it's a very strong deck as well. It's very similar to the Pathfinder's early card advantage, but the ability to control where your sites go is very strong. We see here Avatar of Air only had 3 players with it, and two of them made it to top 16. Avatar of Air is a very you got to thread the needle with Avatar of Air. You have to play your sites very specifically to be always nearby a free city or a bottomless pit. It rewards people who know really good site placement and can control movement very well. It's a very scary list, but it's also a little tricky to play. And we have the one Seer make it to top 16, and we had 3 in Gen Con 2023, but in the list reviews, Seer was a much different idea of a avatar a year ago. Moving on to artifacts, we see the cores were the most popular in the Courtesan Cup, which is understandable. But in Gen Con, the mixed Terras and mixed Airs are here. Like I've said before, a year ago, people were playing a lot bigger minions, taking longer to get there. And so mixed Terras and mixed Airs helped get those out a little bit earlier. But since the meta has moved to much more low to the ground aggressive stuff, the mixes have kind of fallen out of favor just because they're card disadvantage. If you spend an extra card to get your Pudge Butcher out on turn 2, and on turn 3 they just bury it, you're down a card. So that's a little bit worse there. Angel's Egg has been good for a year. The gaining 2 every turn cycle, if you have 2 of them, you're gaining 4 every turn cycle, especially with people playing bigger stuff last year. It was much stronger, and nowadays with Fury Road, where they're chipping in for 2-3 damage each, even against Avatar of Air, it's very good because they're doing like the death by 1,000 cuts strategy of they're always attacking, and they can always find a little hole in your defenses. Angel's Egg really helps mitigate a lot of that damage. Angel's Egg falls a little bit when you're going against like a Jin combo or a Crater Rise, something that does large burst damage. Angel's Egg loses its value, but it's still a very, very good card. And here, I think it's the key telling thing is the Trinket. Tor's Hammer Trinket. I think there was only one played in... Yeah, no, there was a couple played in Gen Con, but not to the percentage that it was at the Courtesan Cup. The Trinket's ability to trade profitably is card advantage because you don't lose your minion for their minion, and it allows you to do something every single turn. And Trinket gets a lot better when the decks get a little more homogenized and a little more same across the board, because a lot of people are playing 2, 3, maybe 4 power minions. Like, that's the core of the decks nowadays. And so being able to trade profitably is very strong. Whereas a year ago, anything and everything could have shown up. You could have had a 2 power minion, but maybe you had a 4 power minion, and like there was not the similarities across decks back then. Another one I wanted to call out here is Devil's Egg. Devil's Egg is a reverse Angel's Egg, right? But if you can get that under your opponent's sight with a bats or what have you, or even just on a stealth minion, and just let it sit there and doing 2 every turn cycle, 5 turns in or 3 turns in, it's 6 or 10 damage. That's half your opponent's life. And they don't want to like spend a disenchant on it, or it. You kind of have to, but you can see the jump it has into the top 16. 19% of the decks in top 16 had a Devil's Egg in it, whereas only 4 of their overall playing field had Devil's Egg. Devil Egg is another really strong underplayed artifact. It can go in any deck. You just have to have a minion that is able to hold it effectively, like a stealth or a burrowed minion. Devil's Egg is very strong. Moving on to air here. Lightning Bolt being popular across the board all the time. It's a decent finisher. It removes a 3-power minion effectively. Lightning Bolt has always been good. Even Blink a year ago was very popular. The ability to reposition was very strong. The interesting one here is Grandmaster Wizard. A year ago was played a little bit more than is nowadays, just because, like I said before, the decks were slower. You could refill your hand and not take a huge damage hit when you spent an entire turn playing a 0-power minion. Grandmaster Wizard is very strong in like the Death Speaker decks because they can make immediate usage out of those 3 cards with Nimbus Djinn. So it's still very good. It's just maybe not as good as it once was. Another one I wanted to call out here that had a large disparity between the overall playfield and top 16 is Palaberry Bats. Palaberry Bats doesn't seem like a very strong card, but in Avatar of Air, the ability to play it on turn 1 off of a tower and then push it and attack on turn 2 or turn 3 really helps the Avatar of Air's game plan of death by 1,000 cuts. The ability to attack a turn earlier is an extra 2 damage, and if you get attacked 2 turns earlier, that is 4 damage. So you're essentially starting at 16 versus 20. Palaberry Bats also holds the Angel's Eggs or Devil's Eggs very well. Bats can't be buried. I know it's only a 2 power, but if you play it right, you can kind of avoid the kobolds and violence locations. So Palaberry Bats is very strong, and I think it's a little misunderstood. And then a year ago at Gen Con, there was one Palaberry Bats played in one deck. So that was kind of interesting. Another one here is Headless Haunt. Headless Haunt was not played a year ago. The idea it sometimes doesn't do anything was too great to play it. But now that's kind of viewed as a form of evasion. So it avoids a lot of berries, and it's this random thing your opponent has to deal with. So Headless Haunt is a good minion, but a year ago it felt bad to play. So that was pretty cool. So, and then here for Highland Falconer. Highland Falconer splits that power up, and a Highland Falconer on turn 1, go get a Bats, you have 2 minions on board on turn 1. Yeah, you're on turn 1 and you have to move and get there, but it's stuff on board. Sorcery is in a spot where if you don't remove their minion and let them like snowball or have more minions than you, you're gonna lose the race and tempo game. But Highland Falconer in 2023 at Gen Con was played a little bit, but not to the level it was at the Courtesan Cup. Moving on to water here, we see Atlantean Fate being the top dog, which is understandable. It's the best water site or water card there is. At Gen Con, it was played, but not to the extent that water decks are playing it now.
And here at the Courtesan Cup, we can see the opponent at 4 life playing an Atlantean Fate to submerge both minions of the opponent and his Angel's Egg. Off of the back of this one card, he was able to stabilize and play and get back up to 12 life. Atlantean Fate is a huge swing if it lands correctly.
Ruler of Thule is another very strong one. the charge, the pumping your team is very strong. The one I thought here was pretty cool was Tufted Turtles. Tufted Turtles a year ago was this absolute menace where people didn't understand how to deal with this effectively. And now people did learn pretty quickly, but it was a free block, it was free attacks. My little anecdote, my first in-person sorcery tournament, I won off of the back of Tufted Turtles because my opponent, Dave from Archives of the Realm, hadn't seen it before. And so if you see Tufted Turtles for the first time and you go, oh, it prevents the first instance of damage, it's hard to figure out how to deal with that on the fly. But Tufted Turtles a year ago was much stronger than it is nowadays. But and the last thing I wanted to say about water, it is my favorite element, but it's just not there in the early game. You can see this by the number of water cards that made it to top 16. It's a very good support element, and it has some control elements, and it's very good against like anti-berry stuff. So I think water is a bit in a spot of just kind of, it's a meta call. It's if people are playing a lot of spiders and berries and earthquakes, water can be very strong, but it takes a lot to make it work. Yeah. Here in Fire, Violent from day one was known to be a very good card. I think Violent has always been viewed as like one of the pinnacle cards in Sorcery, which is understandable. Like the ability to ping a 2-power down and then you have a minion, the value trade is amazing. And here's an example at the Courtesan Cup of why Violent is so good. A Violent off of a desert, where she's going to play a desert, ping the boss troll. Violent is going to finish it off. And then, since he has a Geistwood there, if the Unicorn attacks, he can block with Violent, and then the Violent will trigger off of Geistwood, and then deal the extra 2 damage to the Unicorn. So, this one card, granted, Geistwood is unique and it pairs well with it, but this one card has the ability to block and remove 2 minions, just to show why Violent is so good. Firebolts here at the top, and here is another one that's always been very strong throughout the game. Just a 3-power removal is very good. The one that was, I think, the most difference here is Quarrelsome Kobolds. A year ago, Courtesan Kobold's downside of, oh, it kills itself if it doesn't have anything to strike, was, oh, I'm not playing this. But now with the Fire Earth lists, Kobold's just striking your boss troll or literally anything is very strong because it's a 3 for 4 power if you think about it. If you attack and then able to strike your opponent, so you're above rate on damage. Quarrelsome Kobolds also works really well with pump effects with trinkets, which is also very popular. Being able to strike a 3-power unit and just kill that thing is very strong as well. But a year ago, the downside of it possibly killing itself was not even in the question of, do I play this? It was just no. So there was no other evolution there. Another one I wanted to call out, I've talked about it before, is Blaze. Blaze's extra 2 movement is huge. You can attack anywhere almost, and the 2 incidental damage can be a finishing move. A year ago, movement wasn't really thought about that much. It was very siege-like, very just play your front row and kind of march towards your enemy, where now it's much more, how can I weasel my way through your defenses. Blaze is a very, very good card. Moving on to Earth here, Common Sense being the most popular overall makes common sense. The ability to go get whatever you need is very, very good. A year ago, Berry and Earthquakes were up there. Berries and Earthquakes up. It was this premium removal has always been very good. I think what has really changed in a year has been the minions. The idea of low cost, low to the ground, aggressive minions versus these big, great old ones or infernal legions or these 6 or 7 drops. I think it's been the biggest shift in the sorcery deck building ideas. And here, Pudge Butcher is a very, very strong card, but also it dies pretty easily when you just I bury this or Chaos Twister or something. It's more of an example of a year ago. Big splashy minions were the norm and popular thing, uh, but in the overall playfield, Pudge Butcher was a little more popular than in the top 16. Um, just because it doesn't come down and immediately do something. It's not proactive. You kind of have to set it up. There's a little extra you have to do with it, but if you get it to work, it's still very strong. And here is Slumbering Giantess. Percentage wise, it was played very similarly to a year ago, but in the overall play field, there was 17 total ones. Slumbering Giantess in the Fire Earth Shell can be woken up so easily. It almost isn't a downside. It almost doesn't matter a lot. But Slumbering Giantess, like late game, and not having a desert in hand to wake it up feels a little more awkward. But Slumbering Giantess on turn 2 off of a core, and then turn 3 desert attack for 5 is still a very high upside and probably why it gets played a lot. But a little bit of a difference there. And moving on to sites here, the towers have always been good. People have always known towers are good. The extra mana you get and to get something out above rate or above curve is very strong. Mirror Realm has always been popular. The ability to be anything is very flexible and very good. Observatory it was popular a year ago, but I think it's gone up a little bit in popularity just because the ability to smooth out your draw and and curve out really well is very strong. And Bedrocks here have gone up in play because roots have become more popular and a little more consistent. The Bedrock's downside of never being able to move, but also the upside of never being able to be modified, like with Atlantean Fate, is very good. A 3 of Bedrock in any Earth site is just good. Another one I'm going to call out here is Cloud City. Movement. The more you can move, the more you can attack. The more you can attack, the more you can win. A year ago, Cloud City was this awkward site. It's like, why do I want to move my site? But now it's understood the ability to pressure your opponent and lock your opponent in with Cloud City too, like a Cloud City one on turn 1 or 2, and on turn 3 move it up to the left and kind of push your opponent into a corner and can really mess up their game plan. Cloud City is honestly an aggressive site if you wanted to think about it that way. Another one here is Floodplain. Floodplain is the best water site there is. The ability to give you a second water threshold for your Atlantean Fate or whatever water splash you have, be able to flood up your opponent's site. If you have a Floodplain on turn 2, they can't play a burrow minion on their turn 2 site. Floodplain is very strong, and I think that goes to show it's in 30% of decks, even though water is a quote-unquote weaker element. Floodplain is very strong. Another one here is Smokestacks. A year ago, people weren't worried about what your opponent was doing. You're still trying to like hold yourself together and try to figure out your game plan. But now people have figured out good deck ideas and different game plans, but now they can start playing counteractively to mess up your opponent's game. With Smokestacks, it can turn off sinkholes, it can turn off floodplains, it can remove Genesis effects off of deserts or villages, or Pillars of Zaros, what have you. Smokestacks is another big site that is worth a splash in almost any deck. That even if you're not playing fire, you can play Smokestacks and still have some counterplay to your opponent's sites.
And this is another thing I hope to see in Arthurian Legends is some more sight counterplay where you can't really affect your opponent's sights a lot. Like there's Atlantean Fate, Smokestacks, and Sinkhole, or they're really the three ones that come to mind where you can really affect your opponent's sights. And you can move stuff with like Earthquake and Atlas Wanderers, but I hope to see more sight interaction in Arthurian Legends. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for spending the time to me, listening to me yabber on about sorcery cards. I'm very excited for Arthurian Legends. I'm interested to see how it shakes up the meta. I think this might be one of the last meta updates I do of sorcery, just because people are starting to learn what the good cards are. Like, you want to play above rate, you want to play aggressively. I think the next meta shift is probably going to be some kind of play pattern shift of play to your back row or playing more controlling. The aggressive idea has kind of been figured out with the Avatar of Air and Fury Road. It's very strong to always have an ability to attack. But that being said, thank you so much. Maybe I've earned a subscription. If you have enjoyed, thank you very much. I'll see everybody next time. Bye.